Okay, guys, good morning. We are live. Welcome to CertaPay's Coffee Break. This is Coffee Break number 7. And I am drinking a delicious Peruvian Americano from King State Coffee right here in Florida. So I hope you guys all have a delicious coffee. We have Cindy Merkel on the line from our HR team, and she's going to help moderate and deal with all the questions this morning. So remember to open your Zoom group chat, and you can type your questions right into the chat, and we will get to all of them. We're going to push all the questions to the end, and that way we won't miss any. So welcome, welcome. I see some other people from our HR team on the line. We've got Claire and Janet and Amanda. We're so glad everybody's here. Thank you for joining us. These are interesting times. Today we're going to talk about FFCRA again. And if you've been joining these coffee breaks, we've talked about it a few times, but what we really want to do now is drill into how do we manage this now that it's summertime, now that we're already a couple months in, what does it look like? How is the terrain changing? So let's dig in and see what that's going to look like. So taking a quick recap, of course, the FFCRA is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, went into place a couple months ago, and it will be in effect until the end of the year. So that's kind of an important thing to remember is this policy is still in place. It didn't just go the beginning, you know, take care of all the beginning, people who were sick, childcare, whatever, and now we're done. No, it's still in place. So employees who may be just joining you will now be eligible after a certain amount of time. For the sick pay, they're eligible right away. Or you may have somebody who used a portion and is going to use more of it later or whatever. We're going to address these kind of nuances so that we keep you guys in compliance. It applies to all employers under 500. And with the sick pay portion, which is the 80-hour block, there's no minimum time frame for dates of service. But under the FMLA expansion piece, there's a minimum of 30 days. The sick pay is an 80-hour paid leave window, and then the emergency FMLA expansion is 10 more weeks beyond that for a total of 12. So one thing I remind people is full pay is for the individual. 2/3 pay is the individual caring for someone else. And that's how you can kind of think about it. Is it for my actual employee or is it for somebody else in my employee's life? 2/3 pay for the individual employee, or full pay for the individual employee, 2/3 pay if the employee is caring for somebody else. And we've got our caps there, $511 a day for full, $200 a day for 2/3. All right, drilling in a little bit more on that recap. So for the sick pay, that 80-hour portion, you've got your actual employee has been quarantined. They have been advised to self-quarantine by a healthcare provider. They actually have COVID-19 symptoms or have received a positive test result or have the actual diagnosis. So those are within that 80 hours, they receive full pay. It's the actual individual, and they are directly connected to COVID-19. Under those first 80 hours, you also have the 2/3 pay. So your employee is caring for somebody who has tested positive or has been quarantined and needs the extra care. So that would be capped at $200 a day. Or that individual employee is caring for a child whose daycare is closed, school is closed, summer camp is closed, whatever it is. Child care can be anything. A grandparent, a neighbor, a nanny, anyone who cares for your children is considered a child care provider under this bill. And so in that first 80-hour window, if they are caring for a child whose school is closed, daycare is closed, they would be eligible for that 2/3 pay. Now, just real quick, I want to talk about the...
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Hey,
Oh, don't forget to mute yourselves, guys, if you're on the call. So the 80 hours isn't automatically 80 hours. It's based on an average of the individual's time. So if you have an employee who is a part-time employee and normally works 20 hours in a week, then they would be eligible for 2 weeks under this plan, 20 hours in the first week and 20 hours in the second week for a total of 40. They don't get the 80 because that's the number. They get what their particular average is in a 2-week window. And also same with pay. So you would take the average wages that somebody would earn during their time of work, and that's what you would pay them during that time. Commissions count, tips count, bonuses, you factor it all in to get the average wage for this kind of payment. And going to my next slide. Okay, so talking about a layoff versus a leave, this is one of our main questions that we get. What if I was ordered to close? Do I still have to pay for the FFCRA? Well, here's how you figure it out. Is my business open and operating with work available for my employee, but my employee cannot come in because of one of these COVID-19 reasons? Then the paid leave applies. Is my employee versus is my employee able to work, but my business has been ordered to close, or I do not have work available? Now, this is a layoff, a furlough, a case where people would be eligible to apply for unemployment benefits. So that's how you can really separate it in your mind. Am I open and I have work available, but the employee can't come in because of COVID-19? Or is my employee available, but I'm closed and they can't come in because I'm closed? That's when it's a layoff or a furlough. Good. And that's one of our main questions that we get. So I wanted to make sure we covered that. If you have more examples or questions about it, go ahead and throw that in the chat box and we'll talk about it some more. So payroll tax credit. This is how you pay for those wages. If you paid anyone under the emergency sick pay or the expansion of FMLA, those wage dollars are credited against your 941 quarterly taxes due. And so a quick example, let's say you had people out on emergency FMLA and sick pay during the quarter, and it totaled $5,000 in wages just for those individuals on FFCRA. But you owe $8,000 in quarterly payroll taxes on your 941. That means you subtract your $5,000 right off, and then you only pay the $3,000. Easy. Now let's flip that example. Let's say you paid out $8,000 in wages specifically for FFCRA leave, but you only have due $5,000 in payroll taxes. You have a deficit now of $3,000. So the IRS is creating a fantastic form for you to apply for the emergency credit difference. Simple. And they have also stated that they plan to have those credits back to people within a 2-week window. So if you end up in that deficit, get that form filled out. You know, I haven't actually seen the form yet. I don't know that it's created, but we know they've talked about it and they're planning on it. So at the point when we get to the quarterly returns, it should be prepared and ready. And,
Rachel?
And you'll get those back right away. Yeah.
I do have an update that we are working on some more PPP forgiveness reports for our clients as well. And we can let everybody know when those come out.
Oh, we have some fantastic PPP reporting. So, you know, it's such a great point because our next coffee break is going to be talking about the PPP loan forgiveness program, where we're going to talk about all those forms and ways that we can help you out. And when we go back to FFCRA, we do have some great reporting available for you in the payroll system. So you can track hours. If you're paying them, you just code the hours as they happen, either full pay or partial pay, right in the system. And then our system can create reports for you so that when the 941s are prepared, it'll be very easy. The information is in our system. If you are a Certipay payroll client, chances are good we prepare the 941s for you, and so that will also make your life pretty easy, which is what our job is. So we hope if you're on this call and you're not a client yet, please reach out to us because you should be. All right. So let's keep moving. So I really wanted to drill down to that emergency FMLA expansion because this is where the questions are coming in now. It's summertime, school's out. What do we do? Does it still apply? And what if this or what if that? Please ask the questions. It's okay. So here's the specifics. The FMLA applies if the school or childcare is closed due to COVID-19. If it's closed for some other reason, it wouldn't apply. But if they're specifically closed because of COVID-19, then yes, the emergency FMLA expansion would apply. Now, having said that, I can't imagine a school or daycare is closed for any other reason right now, but you never know. That's a requirement. Another piece is childcare is actually required. So the DOL says 18 and under, the IRS says 14 or under. Really now the update from the DOL is childcare required? So chances are if you've got high school kids, you don't need to run around and care for them during the day. This is a place where conversation is important. You need to have conversations with the employees. We have to trust the employees right now. The information they tell us is what we go by. And so if somebody says to you, my kids are high school, they're fine, I'm not worrying about it. Or they're junior high, it's not a big deal, everybody's fine, they're at the skate park. Or if they say, listen, I have a 17-year-old special needs child, I cannot leave that child alone in the day, then this applies. If childcare for the child is required, then it applies. And we take the word of the employee. We'll talk about that just a bit more in a minute. Okay, so the employee is unable to work because they're providing care. So 2 and 3 go together there. Your employee can't work or telework because they're providing care for that child. And number 4, the employee is the only one who can provide care during those times. So if you've got 2 parents in the household and the other parent is a stay-at-home parent or is available, then the EFMLA expansion doesn't apply to the employee. But if there are 2 parents and you can work a schedule, this FMLA expansion can be used intermittently. So you can use it in 4-hour increments or 1-hour increments or every other day, 3 days on, 2 days off, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, at home with the children, Tuesday, Thursday in the office. You can split that up whatever works. And maybe the 2 parents caring for the children can alternate their EFMLA usage. Have the conversation, communicate with your employee, find out what works, what makes sense, and then come up with a schedule and use the time wisely. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of yes examples. Just like I said, you've got children who actually need care. You have young children, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. They're out because kinder care is closed, summer camp is closed. You have no place else for them to go. These kids need childcare. You can't leave these kids alone all day and head off to the office. So this is a definite yes example. I had somebody ask me, well, what if they didn't sign them up for camp? Can we ask for proof that they signed up for camp? Well, really, no, you don't want to ask for that proof. And there's a pretty good example where you can show this employee's worked for you for 5 years and the previous 4 years, their kids were in summer camp. Then that's all the information you need. You don't need to have proof that they've already signed up for camp or anything like that. And that doesn't really apply. Again, we're talking about a conversation. Talk to the employees, find out what's going on and what you can do to help and how can you get your employees working, work with them, figure out a plan. Here's another great example. You have an employee who is out on FMLA, regular FMLA already because she had a baby, and she is scheduled to return this summer, but her nanny is no longer available as a result of COVID-19. Also, her spouse has an essential job and is not able to use FMLA expansion. In this case, yes, the employee would be eligible for the emergency FMLA. However, we now have to look at how many weeks has she already used, because the 12 weeks is 12 weeks, and it's not an additional 12 weeks under the emergency expansion. 12 weeks of FMLA in 1 year is the maximum. So let's say this particular example, this employee was out for 12 weeks during the time when she had the baby. She is no longer eligible to use any FMLA expansion because she used all of her 12 weeks. But let's say she only used 8 weeks, and now it's time for her to return. She was planning to return in the summer, but she can't. She has 4 more weeks of this emergency FMLA available to her at 2/3 pay. So while you wouldn't go backwards, none of her other FMLA would be considered paid because it's regular FMLA. But as soon as she would be available to return, it is a COVID-19 situation because she's lost her childcare. So those 4 weeks remaining in the 12-week window, she would be eligible for 2/3 pay until she exhausted the full 12-week maximum. And then at that point, she would have nothing available to use.
Rachel, if she had nothing
Yeah.
left to use, if she has nothing left to use when she comes back to work, can she use the 2 weeks of sick pay to add to the 12 weeks of FMLA?
No, because the 12 weeks of that FMLA are part of it. That's already part of that window.
Okay.
All right. Did I go back too far? Okay. So now we got some no examples. Your employee has a 16-year-old who was supposed to have a summer job down at the local convenience store, only the job got eliminated because of COVID-19. So your teenager's probably going to play video games and go down to the skate park. This is an example of no. This child does not require child care, so the employee would not be eligible. Now, you want to be careful. Have the conversation. Communicate with your employee. You can't just make the decision for them. You can't assume your child does not need care and therefore you're not eligible. Have the conversation with them. Another example, your employee has a spouse who is a stay-at-home parent already, or is home because they have been laid off and they've not been called back to work yet. This is another no example because they are not the only child care provider available during the time frame. So that was one of our 4 points, is they've got to be the only one. So there gets to be, we start to see some gray lines here. So again, you want to be careful. Have a conversation with the employees and let them tell you what the story is and then go by that. So what do? If we're having conversations and we're asking them, we have to go by their word. We want some documentation. There is no documentation required, and the DOL has very specifically said, do not ask them to give you proof. Don't send them to get proof for you. Just ask them, have the conversation. We've created a fantastic FFCRA form, and we're happy to share it with you. When we get to the end of this, please make sure we have your email. We'll send you the form. Please use it. And what's important on this form is the information that the employee gives you. So they're going to tell you, these are, my kids, this is how old they are. I'm the only parent who can care for them. The camp is closed, the child care is closed, whatever it is. But most importantly, they're going to sign it. And there's a statement that says, I am telling you the truth. And that's the important piece of the information. So you're asking the employee to be honest with you and give you documentation that tells what happened, what the story is, and that they're telling you the truth with their signature. So the thing is here, you're going by their word. We're saying you got to dig deep right now. You have to trust your employees and know that you're going to get these wages back in tax credits, and you want to trust what they're telling you. And in the event that they're not being honest and you find that out later, they are subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. So get that information, get the signature, document what you can without pushing them to get additional proof. Good so far? So just my final thoughts and takeaways. Remember, FFCRA is in place for the rest of the year, so we need to think about it and manage it in terms of, what's been used, what's remaining. Keep track for different people, because the FMLA expansion can be used intermittently. Your sick pay portion, that additional or the beginning 80-hour window, may be broken up. It is not meant to be intermittent, but you may have somebody who used a week at the beginning because they were told to self-quarantine or whatever the case is, and now they may come down with it again. COVID-19 is not gone. We have case counts still going up in different parts of the country. And so we still want to pay attention. You might have somebody who comes down with it or has a positive test result later, in which case you want to do all the proper things. You want to make sure that you provide the sick time available to that individual and manage things as you can according to the CDC guidelines. Document everything that you can for your records so that you can show, if called upon, you can show what wages were paid and why, and trust your employees. That's the best thing to do right now. And finally, do the best you can. These are crazy times for all of us, and do the best you can, document what you can, try to just do the best. If you need help, we are here for you. And so finally, before we go into questions, I just want to say, CertaPay has your back. We are here for you every step of the way. We've created reports and documents and information, and if you need us, we are here. We are glad to help you. So thank you again for joining us on our coffee chat, and let's see what kind of questions we have today.
Actually, the only one I have so far, Rachel, does CertaPay have any tracking documentation that can be shared, or do you recommend that companies create their own tracking system?
What we have is reporting capabilities that's tied to our payroll and time system, so it would track it within that system. So we don't have a standalone tracking system. So yes, I would create something. Every time, you can just make a simple grid. Every time somebody uses any of this FFCRA time, add their name to the list, write the amount of time they've used, and just tally it, dates, times, amounts. Create your own grid as a backup. And one thing you want to remember is this is potentially medical information. If you've got somebody who's out for sick reasons, protect this. HIPAA compliance still applies, so confidential information still has to be protected. If you create a grid like this, make sure it is private on your computer, you have safety mechanisms in place, or people do not have access to this information. So keep that in mind with any of these pieces, that you protect the information.
Next question, Rachel. Since you said not to ask for any proof of illness, how would you suggest they document? It's basically,
yeah. Yeah, so really simple. You're asking them to fill out the form. They're going to give you the name of the physician who made the recommendation, possibly the date they went to a testing facility, the results they got from the testing facility. If they have a screen catch of a conversation they had with a physician, anything that they have that can help back up what they're telling you. We just don't want to send people, go get me proof of this or that. We certainly don't want to send people to the medical facilities, so we don't want to take the time out there so they can get something that says, yeah, they can come back to work, they're fine, or no, they have this or that. If they've had a situation, they're going to have something that backs up their sheet.
Next question. CertaPay's C-19 sick FP for full pay report does not cap a weekly payment of $2,555 on its own. What happened was I paid an employee over that amount by mistake under the sick pay. So basically they've overstated the sick pay.
Okay. So my understanding is there's supposed to be caps in place. So perhaps that happened before the caps were administratively changed, or there could be a glitch. So that would be a great case of reaching out to your payroll coordinator and see if there's something that needs to be adjusted there, but there should be caps on that.
Next question, does CertiPay and/or Timeco have it set up to track FFCRA time for employees?
Yes, it's in there. It's C19 full pay and C19 partial pay. So if you go in there, it should automatically be available in the dropdown. Again, if it is not, if you don't see it, please reach out to your payroll coordinator, and your coordinator will be able to flip a switch to make sure that you have access to that.
Next question, when the unpaid FMLA has run out, what do you do with an employee who is still scared to return to work? Are we required to separate them? What about their employee benefits?
So, okay, let's break that down. Unpaid FMLA, not really sure what you mean by that, because if somebody is on FMLA for a regular reason, like let's say our example of the woman who had the baby, and so if she exhausts her FMLA and is scheduled to return to work but cannot, and if she cannot return because she has a child care issue, that's one thing. But if the person just says, I don't want to come back, so this is where you have an issue. You have work available, you're asking the person to come back, and they're telling you they're not coming back. Have a conversation. First, find out why. If they are not aware of your safety protocols, have the conversation. This is what we're doing. We have additional cleaning in the facility. We are following these safety guidelines. We have masks and antibacterial dispensers and whatever you're doing. So have the conversation and see if it's that. Can you make the employee comfortable enough to return? If the employee says no, that is the employee's choice. If you are doing everything you can to provide a safe environment and they still don't want to come, that is a voluntary resignation. So if you've done everything you can and they still don't come back, then they have voluntarily abandoned their position. Are you muted, Cindy? Did you leave?
I'm sorry?
Oh, there you are. I didn't hear you.
Oh, an Amber Alert came up on my phone. My mistake. I didn't realize it would cut you off. Basically, they have an employee out on extended FMLA. She earns minimum wage plus tips. This client was told that tips were not included, but obviously our presentation says that tips and commissions are included. Can you please clarify?
Yes, and tips are included. So what you want to do is take a look back. Take that individual employee, go back in a 6-month window and create a new average rate for the individual employee. So you will factor in all of the hourly wage that you paid plus the tips that the individual earned, get a total. Divide by the total number of hours, and that will be the rate that you pay under FFCRA. So if the person is out on sick, it would be the full rate at that 511 cap. If the person is out on childcare for the expansion, for the FMLA expansion, then it's 2/3 pay. So whatever that rate is, capped at $200 a day. But yes, you're going to factor in all of those tips to get your new hourly rate. And so do a nice look back period over 6 months and get a new average for that individual.
I actually have no more questions. I do have a few email addresses that folks had already sent. If there's no more questions, please put your email address in the chat box and I will ensure that you get this presentation as well as I know the other folks were requesting the form. I will also send the form in addition to the link.
Fantastic. All right, guys, next week we hope to have some new forms for the PPP loan forgiveness. The application that was out, the 11-page application that everybody was so excited about, is probably going to change. So provided we get all of our updates for the PPP loan forgiveness, that's going to be next week's coffee break, and we'll go over it again and make sure you guys get the maximum forgiven on your loans and help you out with those forms. Thanks again. Thank you for joining us for our weekly coffee breaks, and we look forward to chatting with you next week. If you need us or need help, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. CertaPay is here for you. Thank you very much.
Last call for emails, guys.